see just how hard it is to be commissioner. Like I do every week, I'm trying to find where the live stream is so that I can look into the chat if there was one. And like every week, I swear I think I have it figured out, and I don't. God, there it is. It's annoying. All right. Got the chat window up. If anybody is in there, then I'll see the questions. Just going to paste that to the Discord. Thrilling content for the video, I know. All right, let's talk through the results. So I'll grab the data after this. We had Corey and I squaring off. Two teams that should be headed in very different directions. Corey should be, on the way up. He's unloaded his draft picks and looks like he should be a locked-in playoff team, hoping to get pretty close to the bye, I would think, with that investment that he has made already. And I just sold everybody and should be on my way down, but was able to claw back to a 7-10 result this week. I mean, my scoreboard looks a little bit crazy because I just manipulated a setting that changes the order of the stats and shouldn't be showing all these, but in fact, JW told me about this, so if you're curious and wanting to rearrange the order of the statistics, you can go to your team settings, stat order, customize. Yeah, why is it showing? Looked like everything was good. Oh, there it is. Back to normal. Okay, so anyway, now we can finally really start the video. I was able to scrap a couple offensive categories, even though I didn't really do any sort of damaging. 373 slugging, 5 home runs, very weak. Corey had a pretty good week offensively as well. I would say it's a shame for him to have only won 5 of the 9, if you consider errors a part of that, because my offense didn't really do great, just pretty solid at a few things. I was good at walks. And then pitching-wise, we had pretty close numbers. Like, honestly, it could have flipped and I could have won with one more home run and like a few less strikeouts. If Corey had had another home run, Corey in the chat here. Yeah, if he'd given up one more home run, like it could have maybe flip-flopped. I might have actually been able to win. But anyway, I will take the 7-10 for me. That was a big celebration. We had Frank and Casey. Casey gets the win over the #1 team in the league by VTL and standings. So something to be happy about if you are Casey there. The pitching really showed up. You got a really nice 2.53 ERA. Very few home runs allowed, a lot of quality appearances, and a lot of holds. So a couple really big numbers there. The offense wasn't good, 219 average, 354 slugging, a really high strikeout rate. Nothing exceptional even with these ones that you won. I don't think those are like exceptional numbers. So looked like the offensive battle wasn't a super strong like back and forth necessarily, but some pretty good numbers on the pitching side from Casey. Just sort of looks like a down week from Frank, though. I will say the pitching was horrible. You look at some of these numbers, and the batting definitely didn't pop. So Frank probably looking to take his anger out on this week's opponent, whoever that may be. Brad getting a big win over Jeremiah. The cursed Jeremiah, if you ask Jeremiah. And once again, we have a 500-plus slugging, and so kind of hard to argue that Jeremiah has not been unlucky. Big week offensively from Brad. I'll look and see how it compares with some of the other weeks because it is possible that this is Brad's best offensive week. Most of these numbers are pretty big. Really low strikeout rate. Like, that's wild. Pitching wise, neither of these two, sides are strong in terms of ERA or batting average. Jeremiah winning both by a slim margin, but the K per nine, walks per nine, and home runs per nine for Brad were exceptional. So it's quite strange. You gave up a lot of runs and a lot of hits, but none of them left the yard, and you really didn't strike. You struck a lot of people out, and you didn't really walk anyone. How is the ERA so high? Pretty encouraging week for Brad, I would say. Like, that is, without having made any moves, that is a really high level of ETL. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if this were like a 65% total VTL kind of week with that kind of offensive production. And then for Jeremiah, even though Brad was very effective on offense, I would say your offense also wasn't very good, and so you would have probably lost most of these offensive categories against most teams, except probably for that average, which is pretty strong. So it's not just bad luck. I would say your offense hasn't been producing particularly well yet either, but you've just acquired some dudes, and I'm sure you'll continue to do so. So we'll see the numbers creep up over time, I sure imagine. Yeah, I think that's a great point, Corey. Corey says Jeremiah really should just be considered a good luck charm. Let's frame it in a positive way. Jeremiah is bringing Christmas with him every time he has a matchup. When Jeremiah is there, everyone feels safe and comfortable to rake and to tee off. And so we should really be complimenting you on your welcoming, warming presence. Good luck charm. I like that. We've got JW and Glenn with a really tight battle. So I think anytime you see an expansion team winning or sticking really close, you say, "Go expansion team, good job." We just saw a big trade from Glenn yesterday to Alex. That did not affect this matchup. So you look at the batting, JW won easily in those few counting stats at the top. The average was super close. Not a lot of high level production from either side, I wouldn't say, except that average was pretty strong from JW. I mean, 45 runs is not bad either, I don't think. 9 home runs actually might not be that bad either. It looks like a solid week, solid to decent week from JW on offense. On the weaker side from Glenn, to be expected, probably. JW's pitching was really nice. 2.65 ERA with very few home runs and a really good batting average against. Ton of holds. He'll take that. This walk per 9 was like really not even close. But other than that, actually no. Glenn had 5 quality appearances and 3 saves. So Glenn scrapping, basically taking half the batting, half the pitching. That's pretty good, I think. Probably disappointing a little bit for JW, looking for a bounce back after a pretty slow start to the season. We've got Maffey and Duran. Maffey sweeping pitching across the board, and Duran again, when we broke after week 1 and did this recap video, he had an insane pitching line, and it looked like maybe he could hang tight in pitching. That could be his key to sticking in the middle of the standings, maybe getting a higher draft pick than you would have expected from an expansion team. The pitching has not been good lately. These numbers are horrible, I would say. 5.14 ERA, horrible. 3.10 batting average against is horrible. To get 5 quality appearances despite those things, pretty weird, honestly. I mean, and he still didn't win, which that's unfortunate. 5 quality appearances is good enough to win most of the time. But yeah, these other numbers are really bad. We know that Duran, well, I'll save some of the narrative for like who has pieces left to trade, which I do want to talk about a little bit. Offensively, just by 1 batting average point, anytime I see it get that close, it's always tough. Corey says he traded a lot of pitchers away. To you, right? I guess that's how you're the inside source on that, right? Who did he trade? He traded In that deal, it was Gaussman and someone else I have in mind. Where are you, Corey? Let me look. I forgot. You could type it in there if this is fast enough for you to really react to that. Gaussman, I know, came over. I traded Yui Managa and Waka. Oh, I guess I could just click on here and see the transactions. Oh, I guess I didn't trade. He traded Waka and Gaussman. Yeah, and Duran. Okay, yeah. Those are two good pitchers. I mean, Waka's been up and down a little bit, but yeah, I can buy that. So yeah, he came out of the keeper deadline with a really good staff because he prioritized pitching, I think is what it was, and he still has some arms down there that you would be, jealous of, right? Glasnow and Wheeler, Burns probably just for next year at this point. Jack Leiter had some, you know, moments in the very, very early going. He still has guys like Jared Jones, Joe Musgrove. So, like, I still think of the staff as pretty good, but certainly a few of these numbers looking pretty ugly. Anyway, getting off topic. Big win for Maffey, I think it was. That's two big wins in a row, if I recall, as well. 13-3-1 this week. Last week, Maffey 11-6 over Jeremiah. So that's 24 wins, 9 losses, and 1 tie over 2 weeks. That's great. Maffey's put himself squarely in the playoff picture after those couple weeks. Alex and Bo, big matchup of two of the real contenders, at least in the early goings, right? Neither one had made a move yet. Alex making a move yesterday. So we figured both of these teams will change by the time they play each other again. But Alex takes this one 11-6, mostly on the back of some really strong offense. And Bo, once again, really good pitching numbers. The pitching from Bo been sensational so far this season, and I think Alex's offense had not been very good this season, but the numbers, the ratio numbers at the bottom here, quite good. I mean, 297 average might have been the best. 496 slugging, probably was top 3. The K percentage, if I didn't see with my own eyes that Brad had like a 13% K rate, I would have said for sure that has to be the best. 1 error, probably the best. So nice offensive week from Alex. It just so happened the counting stats were just enough to beat Bo in runs and RBIs. And then the pitching from Bo, really solid, but Alex still got all the counting numbers, quality appearances, saves, and holds, and was able to scrape 1 extra category. So a pretty firm win for Alex. We'll see that matchup again later in the season, and won't be surprised if we see that thing in the playoffs. We got Nate and French. French gets the 11-6 win, basically because he swept offense. K rate will never be French's strong suit. He lost that one, but he won all the rest. Pretty good recipe for success. I'll say, too, that the offense didn't really do anything crazy. It mostly looks like Nate's offense was just really bad. I mean, these might be the worst numbers almost across the board. He has more home runs than me, but big whoop. I'm the worst home run team for sure. So, yeah, not a good week offensively from Nate. The pitching was pretty strong still, though. And French, he's offense first, pitching third, you could almost say. There is no second. The pitching has been actually pretty weak, but this week it wasn't that bad. He narrowly lost. Wow, actually, I say this, he narrowly lost. That wasn't that big of a loss. That was narrow. Dang, I mean, French wasn't far off from like a gargantuan win here. So never mind. I would joke my joke at the expense of your pitchers. Your numbers were actually pretty solid. So now we'll take a look at the standings. Here they are. A little small for y'all, probably. So we have Frank still up at the top, a couple games up on Alex, who there is a little bit of a tier. I don't know about the quality. I'm not saying it's a quality-based tier, but with 5.5 games between second and third place, Alex and Frank kind of separating themselves a little bit. Corey, French had a huge win over me several weeks ago. I didn't necessarily expect him to go like so high so quickly, so that's really encouraging for French, and the offensive strategy seems to be working in the early going. Corey, right where I expect him to be, consistently a playoff team. Nate and Bo tied after that for the 5th, 6th spots. I've definitely seen enough from Nate that I still think he could be a contender as well, but it doesn't seem like it's a great core necessarily like some of the years past, and so we'll definitely see. He may choose to sell. We've got Bo, who I think has underperformed a little bit so far relative to my expectations. I think he'll get there, and he has a full arsenal of picks to buy, and we know he will buy. At least I think pretty confident, right? It'd be strange if he did not buy, I would say. And then after that, Maffey and Brad tied for that last playoff spot / first pick. Both of them have looked pretty good in the like last couple weeks, especially. So like we have a really nice field of 8 right there. I could easily see Nate coming out of it. But let's not forget too that Casey just beat Frank, and even though the start of the season hasn't been exceptional, he just made a big move. He's gonna go all in. He doesn't have a first, second, or fourth anymore. There's no reason that he shouldn't just go for it this year. I'm gonna quickly fall down. He'll pass me in a heartbeat, and then we're really gonna be looking at a group of 9, where all 9 of those teams should probably be buying. And then we know that Jeremiah, currently in 14th, is also going. He's already spent his first, third, and fifth. So even though he's at the bottom, I would not expect that to last. And there's a gap between him and like the playoff field of 15 games. We're through 5 weeks. Good teams are surely going to rise up. And when you look at guys like me, 2 expansion teams. Well, there's 3 teams we know he's going to pass. Then it's just about can he pass JW, Casey, Brad, and Maffey, or maybe Nate drops. Anyway, I don't expect Jeremiah to stay at the bottom. And then I didn't touch on the 2 expansion teams. Right now it does look like they're probably going to be settling in near the bottom. Going to be pretty hard for them to maintain a spot in the middle when there are so many teams that are going to try to win, and they just didn't come in with lots of talent. So even though the dream for them is to finish 8th, that looks like in the early goings we're through a 4th of the season. I'm going to predict that they'll probably finish 13, 14. Shouldn't be a surprise if that happens. It's not like they failed if that happens, but it's starting to look like the talent probably not going to be there for them to sustain long-term success when there are so many teams buying in. And then there's JW, who has not had a good start to the season, and I don't know exactly where he's thinking about going. But I do want to do the VTL, pull those numbers real quick, and then I want to talk about kind of like positions and standing, who's going to go for it, who is still yet to make a move, and who could still make a move, because I think that that's a really fun topic. So let me just show you exactly what goes into pulling the data. All I do is pull up a Gemini tab. I go to the standings for the prior week. I copy all the data. I go into the thread with the Gemini, which says VTL help. I'm going to give it a table of data to work with, straight from Fantrax. It knows what to do from there. It just takes it a second. Just wait for it to finish pasting all the table data. We can pull our file, download it. And then we'll just take it all go to our Gemini stat log down to week 5, paste the data, and that's it. So let's look at just week 5 data real quick, the data that just came in before we look at the adjusted season long. So we're looking for, this tab is where I look first. This is not really that important. This is the actual win percentage of the week, as in you won 11 categories, you lost 5, you tied 1. That, as a mathematical percentage, would be, I don't know, 70%. That's not that fun of information. I'll still leave it, but this is the VTL. So Brad with a 70% total VTL, he was the one I said I wouldn't be surprised if that were 65%. It was 70. Big week for Brad. Corey with a 63% week, 60 to 65%. Honestly, 65 to 70% is where I really say, like, wow, that is statistically pretty rarefied air. So 63.3 is getting very close to that. Alex and Casey each with really strong weeks too. And then Maffey with a good week. JW not far behind, 53%. Might be one of the better weeks from his early going. And then Nate, Duran, and Glenn with the 3 worst weeks. The batting from Nate, just 16%. That's the craziest one. That's the lowest of any of the groups for any side this week was Nate's batting. And then when you look at the opponent total VTL, so it's like you couldn't really draw it up. It's like a bit that I'm planning or something. It's like I know in advance who will do well, and I've got them against Jeremiah because he already was, to my knowledge, the highest opponent VTL percentage by a pretty good margin. And then who does he face this week? The pretty standout best performer by VTL. And again, it's the insane offensive performance from the opponent specifically because Jeremiah had a pretty good batting VTL, 54%. He had a pretty bad pitching VTL. but Brad had a 30% higher VTL number on offense, which nullifies Jeremiah's good offensive week. And then he didn't have a good pitching week, but he didn't need to because Jeremiah had a bad pitching week. It happens every week. It's kind of crazy. I hate to feed the narrative because your team also needs to perform, Jeremiah, or else you're not going to rocket up the standings. But you should have lucked into some more wins than this. There's really no denying that you have been quite unlucky. So let's look at the actual updated numbers now for the season. So Jeremiah, for example, a 63.6% opponent VTL. It's almost 10, it's more than 9% more than anybody else. I hate to do it because I know it's going to like enrage you, Jeremiah, but it's true. You're quite possibly this might be the high. I have no way of checking this. I don't keep the numbers like this. This could be the highest number with 5 weeks of sample data. It could be the highest number I've ever seen. I don't recall ever seeing. So it's like 63% total VTL. Frank has been 65% this season. Alex has been 64% this season. Nobody else is above 58%. So the third best team in the league so far has operated at a 58% level. And every week you face a 63% level. I mean, basically, it's not that far of a stretch to say you're playing the equivalent of the best team in the league every week. That's rough. That's why you're last in the standings. Doesn't obviously make you feel better right in the moment, but at least it isn't like your team is complete trash. Well, I will, and I didn't mean to say well like that and infer, yes, maybe it is. Your VTL is low. So, like, that's what I'm fighting against. Your VTL has been low. It's 45.5%. That's the 4th lowest in the league. You haven't been a good team this year. And yet, you shouldn't have lost this many games. You shouldn't be last. That's what I'm trying to say. So, hopefully, as your team performance improves, your luck will normalize and you'll, like, slingshot up. But yeah, I'm just fascinated by how much unluckier you have been than everyone else for I think what feels like maybe legitimately like the second of 3 seasons where it's like no matter what you do, you're unlucky. So sorry, I know I keep feeding that same narrative over and over, beating you over the head with it. Does appear to be kind of true though. That's a really good VTL for Frank and Alex. So Alex's VTL was not. I was looking at actual win percentage, not VTL. So let's unwind for just a bit. VTL wise, this makes it so much worse than what I already said. The highest VTL is 57%. And every week, Jeremiah is facing the equivalent of 63%. This is, sorry, I don't even want to expand on that, but like, basically take the best team in the league, increase them by 10%, and then that's what Jeremiah plays every week. That's crazy. Okay. So what I was going to say was, wow, Alex's VTL is really rebounded. Look how high this is. That's not quite the case. Alex's VTL is 53.4. We can see here that that is the sixth best. So he hasn't performed like an elite team yet, really. But the standings say he's in second. Frank has looked the part and has felt like the part. Bo has had a really good VTL. There's a super cluster like right around this 54 to 50, 53.5 to 56.5 mark where there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 teams kind of all together. But technically speaking, Bo is second in VTL. So even though he lost this week to Alex and isn't as high in the standings yet, it looks good for Bo, which is why I think when he buys, he'll be in good shape. So yeah, we've got Frank number 1 VTL, Bo 2, Corey 3, Casey 4. So that's pretty significant. Casey currently in 10th in the standings, just beat Frank, and I think he went down in the standings because it was like a 9-8 victory. 4th in VTL, 10th in the standings. That's really tough. You know, the weirdest part too is that I'm seeing that your opponent VTL hasn't actually been good. So you must have had the benefit of facing a couple teams when they were really bad and a couple teams when they were really good, but you must not have maximized your opportunities to take all the categories from the really bad teams that you faced in the really bad weeks. So like, you know, if someone has, let's say you perform really well in one thing and you're the best and your opponent is the worst, and then you're the best in this other thing and they're the worst, and then you're the best in a third thing and they're the worst, your VTLs are going to look like crazy different, but then you're super competitive in all the other categories. At the end of that matchup, your VTL is still going to look better than theirs, even though y'all went kind of like 50-50. You may have won these 3. They may have lucked out and won like a little more than 50% of the others. That's the scenario where your VTL can be here, your opponent's VTL can be here, and yet your record is under 500. It's very unlikely that that would happen in a substantial way. It looks like it's happening for you so far. Interesting. Number 5 in VTL is Brad. 6 is Alex. 7 is Nate. So again, I know Nate's talked about will he sell, and it doesn't look like the foundation is giving him the production that he's traditionally wanted when he goes all in. So I will not be surprised if Nate does in fact sell. We got French at 8. I'm still at 9, but again, that's gonna go down. Maffey 10, Jeremiah 11, Duran 12, JW 13, Glenn 14. So I want to talk a little bit about just like who has sold, who has bought, and kind of what's left. I don't have a lot longer that I can really spend this week, but when I look at the standings, we see that Frank is at the top. I'm going to zoom in, assuming this will make it easier for everybody. So we have Frank at the top of the standings, and Frank has not purchased anybody. So he has his full complement of picks. We know that Frank has gotten into the buying market occasionally. Last year, I think he invested a few high picks. I think the year before he might have traded his first. So he's dabbled in the waters of trading, kind committed a significant amount of picks, I think, at least in one of the last 2 years, even. But we've never seen him go scorched earth all in. If there is a year to do it, Frank, if I might be your financial advisor, your fantasy advisor, not that you don't already know, this is probably the year for you to go all in. Your team is performing at a really high level. You have a lot of expensive players, which might be trouble to keep next year. You are a prime candidate to go all in, and maybe next year you use your really, really expensive guys to try to recap some picks. That would be my advice to you, as someone who wants to see you win a title eventually, right? Because you've been so consistently good. Alex just purchased yesterday with a first, second, and fourth DeGrom, Walker, Cade Smith, and Aroldis Chapman. So obviously, if DeGrom gets hurt at any point, that deal will feel bad for Alex. But if DeGrom continues to be a Cy Young caliber guy, that's going to make him significantly better. Christian Walker's been really hot too, so it feels like smart play from Glenn in that he sells a risky injury guy and someone who's performing at a really peak level. Probably for his entire career, this might be his peak. And then two closers, which closers are fickle, even though these two guys feel like they're locked in, like there's no chance they're going to lose their job. Closers in general, like trading them can make sense because the volatile nature of bullpens sometimes. But Alex did get better, and he's the second ranked team. The VTL is still like top 5, I think it was. So I look at Alex as a legit contender, and we know, having spent a first, second, and fourth, I don't really feel like there's any reason to hold back and not spend your third and your fifth. We have seen so consistently that you can recoup assets in the offseason. You're already all in. You better keep being all in, I would say, right? Trading your first, second, fourth, and then freezing and refusing to spend more if the opportunity presents itself, that would be odd. So I imagine Alex will keep going. We know that French is not afraid to throw around a first, second, third for a package that he feels is game changing. So I expect French in third place to also be in the buyer's market, and he's always active and always open for business. It's just a matter of what will he prioritize. A team like Alex kind of has both sides of the ball, generally speaking, in order. 54%, no, 56% batting, 50% pitching. Frank has 64% batting, 49% pitching. Well, French has 55% batting, but only 44% pitching. So it feels like French should go after pitching, but it does sort of pose the question, right? If you're really good at one side of the ball and you only have so many assets to spend, does it make more sense to say, let me just make sure my offense is better than everyone, and I'm going to just really specifically target a few pitching things and say screw ERA or screw walks per nine. I'm going to have strikeout only reliever focused stuff paired with the best offense. So I could see French going either way, funny as that might sound with a 45% pitching VTL. I could also see him clearly just saying, I want to buy 3 pitchers with my top picks and hope that that balances him out to like 50% or more. And then maybe he can be like a little bit above average on both, or hopefully above average batting, but probably not elite unless he like leverages. Anyways, this is the question. I think his offense is probably already on the track to be like elite with just 1 or 2, 3 more little subtle additions. Anyway, Corey has already spent a lot of the elite capital he has. His team is what it is because I think there will be so many people ready to buy that I don't think he'll be able to get very much for 9th, 10th, those kind of picks, unless he can approach people directly without going into like, if Corey tries to sit back and see who's available and then bid, he'll be outbid by probably 5 teams. So he may have to approach people individually on his own and hand pick, I want this guy. And frankly, I could see a scenario where you wait to the last second and take whatever bargain deals are available, because that could happen. But going and picking the people you think will help you most now, I could also see the appeal in that before everyone has bought in. Going and selecting your target could be useful. I think Nate's going to sell, but I'm never really sure exactly what Nate's going to do. If he wanted to push and try to win this year, He has some elite dudes on the team. Some of them have kind of struggled this year, and some of them are now hurt. With Skubal and Joe Ryan had a little scare the other day. So it doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel like the time is right. Nate likes to have that high percent chance to win it all if he's going to go in. He's just won 2 years in a row. He's not in a rush, I don't think. It's not like anyone's threatening to take the crown of most successful team in Funky Town baseball away from him, unfortunately. So I imagine he's going to sell, and then it's just a matter of who does he sell to. He has enough talent to load up a couple teams with some really significant packages, probably get a first back, multiple firsts back from a couple teams. We're obviously seeing quite a few teams have bought already. Jeremiah, Corey, Casey, and Alex have all dealt their firsts already. Clearly, the expansion teams are not in contention. So that's at least 7 first-round picks that we know will not move. There's only 5 others. One of them is actually Nate's himself. So there's only 4 other firsts. That would be Bo, French, Brad, JW, Maffey. I guess I miscounted. Those are the 5? Well, Frank too. I forget there's 14 teams. Sorry, in my brain I was still working from a 12. So there's 6 teams that have a first left. So enough options. Yeah, I've been wondering, will so many people be buying that there won't be enough assets to stock all of their teams? But at the time, I didn't know I was going to sell. And so we'll see if another seller emerges or not. The only teams that are near the standings right now are JW and Jeremiah, who I think did not expect to be there. So one of them could sell, but we just saw that Jeremiah bought in. He's not going to sell. And JW, I don't really know. This week was better for him in terms of VTL, though the overall VTL has not been strong. Bo at 6, I think also needs to treat this year like this is the year. He has tons of cheaper, nice contract guys that are going to be appealing to sellers. And you can't win with dudes in the minor leagues or dudes that just came up and aren't really, set. Obviously, for every one of the dudes that you have that's a minor leaguer that's kind of cheap, but you decide to keep and doesn't pan out, there's a Kevin McGonigal who you buy and they come up and they kill it. So, I see the logic. I love low-cost players like anyone, but I do feel like Bo really needs to leverage everything he has to go for it this year because I think the core of his team is very strong. He's second in VTL, as we just talked about. I feel like there's a really good opportunity for him, so I'll be shocked if he does not go all in and spend first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and try to really win this thing this year. Maffey had a really slow start. But these last 2 weeks have been huge. The offense looks really strong. Not a guy that trades his first, second, third really ever. But last year he did trade his first, and it bit him in the ass big time. So very curious what he will do. I feel like you got to just look past that. You won't be screwed in like that again because Ohtani's not in the draft this year. But, would have had Ohtani if he kept his first. So I understand if there's trauma there and he doesn't want to deal the first this year, but in a year where there's so many people trying to go for it, so many people have already spent their first, you probably need to be willing to spend it. And kind of the same for Brad, who I know has already talked about shopping his first, or Bobby Witt. I don't know which way he wants to go. But I think in the interest of buying, he talked about selling Bobby Witt. So I expect that he also is going to spend big draft capital to try to get better. We know that Casey is now in. He acquired Gunnar Henderson and Nico Horner, and some other guys from me. So he isn't going to sit back and just maybe hedge his bets and sell at the deadline. He's going in. So this is fun. Just going through the list and seeing this many people who are in, it's really neat. Glenn just sold and got a first. He now has 2 for next season, and who knows if he can leverage another one. He still has Mookie Betts. He still has a few other guys of note. JW got a win this week. The VTL looked a little better this week, but hasn't had a good season. The big-time guys, big-cost guys on his team have not performed, but if they can rebound by the deadline, he might be able to sell them for something significant because the names are still like big. Or we could see him try to still go into contention mode. We haven't seen him do anything specific with his picks, so there's nothing to say he can't try to buy as well. We've got Duran, who already has 2 firsts. He sold early to Corey, which is partly why I think you're seeing him fall down the standings so quickly early on. He's going to have to try to see if he can squeeze another like couple high picks out of someone with what he's got left, or start thinking about like what does my $100 look like if I sell more. So we'll see if Duran basically just kind of continues on this trend and probably finishes like 13, 14. And then Jeremiah is like we talked about. The VTL hasn't been particularly good, but the luck has been horrible. For him to be last place is quite unfortunate, I would say, for him. He's right down there. Like this is kind of a tier of 4 teams at the bottom, 24 and a half, 26 and a half, 26 and a half, and 27 games back of first. Big break, 9-game break already in between 10th and 11th. So he's got some work to do, but we know he's going to go for it. And we know that when he goes for it, he goes all in, like he did when he won the championship, like 3 years ago now. So that's just kind of a look, my thoughts, very preliminary on everybody. I guess I didn't talk about me. I'm going to try to scrap and stay like as close to 500 as I can. I don't think I'm going to have the talent. I'll still trade more if someone wants to offer me anything. Let me know because I have some talent that's still there. I could trade Kyle Tucker maybe or Vlad even if the offer was right. But, we'll see. I'm just going to try to scrape by with a high contact profile and hope I get lucky spot starts from dudes like Jansen Junk, who diced up the Phillies the other day. Thanks, Jansen. I guess that's all I got. So we'll cut it there.